Never let your parents love your parents, but never let your parents say your nickname in public. I think I need another break. Part 3 of this video will be out soon. This is the actress VK baby. I'm taking a break. I'm good. It's the actress VK baby. I'm back again with part 4 of this video. Reaction to Nostalgia Critic's Fox Kids. This is one of his longest Nostalgia Critic episodes he has ever done. 1 hour and 11 minutes. No. 1 hour and some seconds. It's over an hour. Out of all the videos I decided to choose to react to, this is the one. So, if you've seen my recent breakdown, you would notice what I've been through in the little first half. But in this half, I'm hoping for more laughs, more giggles, no more breakdowns or anything. So let's continue, Pikachu.
Yeah, you ruin everything! Stop it! I will not! Shut up! Shut up! I'm supposed to be badass! I'm bad! Stop it! Stop it, all of you! You're too old! I'm not having you back! Seriously, stop.
No.
So even though Fox Kids was growing, it still wasn't the dominant force in Saturday morning or kid shows. But year 3 is when all of that started to change. Fox Kids expanded from Saturday morning to weekday afternoons, which was a risky and expensive move. If they wanted kids to constantly be watching, they needed some kick-ass shows to keep them hooked. Thankfully, they had little gems like this, and this,
X-Men,
and
Animaniacs,
this.
Batman!
Now, I've talked to death about these shows in the past, so I'll do my best to talk about something different about the impact that they had. First, Batman the Animated Series. After 2 wonderfully dark Batman movies, an animated version of The Dark Knight not only won both kids and adults over, but it served as a game changer for Batman in general. A lot of writers went on to several other Batman canon projects. Several characters and backstories created for the show made their way to the official Batman lore. And even to this day, when most people read Batman comics, the voices that pop in their heads are always Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as the Joker. It's hard to read them without making that connection.
Wherever you go, I'll be right behind you.
That's all, folks. Unlike other
Stop the camera! We have a little bit of technical difficulties. We will be right back with you. I'm back. Just a little bit of technical difficulties, but back on track. Back on track.
Popped in their heads are always Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as the Joker. It's hard to read them without making that connection.
Wherever you go, I'll be right behind you.
That's all, folks. Unlike other kid shows at the time, Batman took years to develop, resulting in a unique style not often seen in many animated series. The backgrounds always started off on black paper to keep the dark environment of the show consistent. The characters and buildings had an Art Deco style as opposed to a pulp comic style like all the other shows. And the atmosphere in general was more adult, allowing for quieter moments, slower pacing, and more realistic acting. There was no other animated action series that looked like this at the time. And now, every animated action series is trying to look like this. It walked the perfect tightrope between too playful and funny and too dark and gritty. It seemed like it incorporated everything. It felt true to the comic roots, worked in the adult side of the movies, had a good laugh at the campiness of the situations, and yet somehow also felt like its own unique vision. It's just as good today as it was when it first premiered, and no other Batman show has ever topped it. Think about it. After all these years and all the other incarnations that have come out, no other show has done Batman as well. It's just as clear today as it was years ago why this was a huge game changer. But Warner Warner Brothers was breaking new ground with another game changer. What? I was just talking about Animaniacs. Oh, I see. You guys think I talked about it too much, huh?
If Animaniacs was a prostitute, you'd have paid off 5 of her house loans.
Yeah, what? Did they save your cat or something?
No, but through the magic of wishful delusions, now they have.
Ugh.
Fine, I'll keep it short. Seen as the follow-up to Tiny Toons, Animaniacs was a variety show that stepped up its game. Every episode had a plethora of great songs, memorable characters, hilarious animation, but most important of all, brilliant writing. It was truly the closest we ever came to experience the fresh comedy of the original Looney Tunes. They had the great comebacks, the violent slapstick, the imaginative take on the world we all wanted to experience. This must have been similar to when people saw a Bugs Bunny cartoon for the first time on the big screen. There was just an excitement that you were going to see something clever, funny, and filled with so much energy they felt alive. Along with Batman and Tiny Toons, it was one of the few shows that had an entire orchestra providing the music. And speaking of which, the brilliant songs are still being used by kids today to pass countless school exams. In fact, they even keep updating the songs to coincide with the constantly changing world. In fact, these songs even went on tour with songwriter Randy Rigel and actor Rob Paulsen singing their infectious earworms. They're still that popular. It seems the show was so popular that's even being rebooted. In 2020, these characters are coming back to give their take on modern-day insanity. Imagining the shots they can take with the internet, trends, politics. It's crazy exciting to see where this can go. Will it be as good as the original? I guess only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, we'll always have these timeless, classic, hilarious characters to look back on. Now on to a show I know I barely talked about, X-Men.
Ugh.
Will you two knock it off?
You knock it off. You've talked about this show so many times, there's nothing left to cover.
Oh yeah? I bet I can find something new to talk about.
Prove it.
Fine! Apparently it was the passion project of the head of Fox Kids. Margaret Loesch ironically used to be the head of Marvel Television, producing hit after hit except in one category. Funny enough, the Marvel characters never caught on in TV. Every attempt seemed to bomb, including an early version of X-Men where Wolverine was Australian.
What? She's not joining the X-Men, is she? She's just a kid.
That's almost too ironic.
She went from studio to studio trying to get X-Men made, but they all said the same thing. It was too adult and nobody would watch it. Margaret then went on to be the president of Fox Kids and cared so passionately about getting X-Men a TV series that she...
I want to cosplay as Storm so bad. That's on my bucket list. Cosplay as Storm.
On the line. They knew if this was going to be good, a lot of money had to be thrown at it, so she took the gamble but picked the right producers, writers, and actors to make it work. The only downside is there was not much time to make it work. In fact, the tone and animation were so campy and off-key in the first season that they only had 2 episodes for the big October premiere, that being the 2-part pilot. What the hell do you do when you need months and months to rework your show? You present the first 2 episodes as a preview. Yeah, it pissed off the advertisers and cost a fortune, but Margaret and showrunner Eric Lewald knew they had to get this right if they were going to have a hit. The preview thankfully went over incredibly well and left people wanting more. So, after a redo of the show with better animation and more adult atmosphere, it finally premiered with no other new shows being put on. That's right, because they waited until spring, it got more attention because everything else was reruns. As you'd imagine, the numbers were through the roof. X-Men was suddenly Fox's biggest hit. It represented more than cool heroes with powers. It grasped the prejudice and torture character arcs, as well as the all-around badass nature people love from the comics. After being told no over and over from several studios and even ignoring advice from Stan Lee to make it more kid-friendly, the creators stuck to their guns and turned in a huge payday. Much like the X-Men who had to fight for human dignity, so did the creators who wanted to see their timeless characters done right. X-Men would go on for 5 seasons, one of Marvel's longest-running series. It launched them into the mainstream more than before, leading to several reboot series, comic spin-offs, and of course a beautifully inconsistent movie franchise. This was a gamble that paid off all the way to the X-Bank. So, with those 3 gigantic hits, Fox Kids was moving on to their next big game.
Aren't you forgetting another hit show?
Don't think so.
Yeah, one that still makes like a butt ton of money even today.
There's no other hit shows at that time. teeny incy-wincy hit of a show called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Power Rangers!
It's no secret I never got into this show, even as a kid. It was just so dumb. The same time Batman and X-Men were on, we had...
About that double date we talked about?
Yeah.
So dumb. But okay, let's talk about it a bit, because on the one hand, it is...
Now, Power Rangers was the main thing that used to show up, because I used to have to go to daycare, and Power Rangers would be on at freaking 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, because my mom had this certain job she had to go to. But you didn't have to wait for weekends for Power Rangers to happen.
Is a brilliant marketing strategy. 5 teenagers
With
Attitude.
are summoned by Jabba the Fuzzy Mouth to stop a space witch named Rita for her crimes of bad lip syncing. They first do a martial arts fight against a monster of the week, and then they grow in size and use giant robots in a fight against Los Angeles Japanese mountains. So, yeah, the setup was pretty obvious. Shoot American actors for dirt cheap, and then cut to Japanese stock footage from another hit show in Japan. Power Rangers, of course, turned into a huge hit, which meant as long as they were still making shows in Japan, oh god, they'll never stop! They could keep making shows here. Power Rangers was not only the longest running series on Fox Kids, but it surpassed it. Even after Fox Kids shut down, the show still continues to have an impressively long-lasting life. It had many spin-offs, storylines, reunions, callbacks, and tons of B-movie monsters to fight. On the one hand, I really wanted to like this show because, hey, martial arts, giant robots, killer monsters, that can be some fun shit. But
Guess you finally flipped over me.
so dumb! It was clearly past my time and not for me, but that doesn't mean they didn't tap into something that excited a shit ton of kids. And some very disturbed adults years later. Power Rangers, whether you like it or not, was, and still is, an impressive spectacle. But it wouldn't be the 90s unless we forcibly had to teach you shit.
It's Carmen Sandiego, Carmen Sandiego.
Thankfully, some shows were better at it than others. Like Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego.
I watched this.
Nope.
I watched this in English and I watched this in Spanish because I watched it when it was in English, when it was on Fox, and I watched it on Televisa or Telemundo on Saturdays. I know about this show.
This was a different kind of Carmen Sandiego, one that was on a kid's computer game that tried to educate you.
That's exactly what Carmen Sandiego is.
Okay, maybe not that different. The on-screen player always had to pick 2 characters to go after Carmen, and he always picked the sister and brother duo, Ivy and Zach.
Oh, God, tell me you didn't ship them?
It's a kid who's always at his computer.
So
Probably.
Hello, player. Thanks for picking me.
Yeah, that sounds weird. There's a freaky-ass chief who seemed to be a mix between Max Headroom and the Genie. Ivy, you simply must learn to accessorize! Regrettably so. And the duo had to chase Carmen around the world to get back the famous monuments that they'll inevitably homeschool us about. Okay, listen up, gumshoes. You'll be heading to Holland. It's the home of wooden shoes, tulips, and the world-famous windmills. On the one hand, this doesn't work as well as the game show because the investment came from having to know the information to get further. Here, the show just kind of comes to a halt to teach you something. He used bold colors and violent brushstrokes, often slashing at the canvas as he painted. On the other hand, though, it did have a story to each one, and Carmen herself was just as stylish and cool a villain as you would want her to be. In fact, a lot of the time she would leave the clues on purpose because she loved the thrill of the chase. At first I thought this was kind of lame, but then the more I thought about it, how clumsy is Carmen in the other versions to always leave something behind? Here, she's at least owning up to her stupidity. The show lasted a good while with 4 seasons, and even though the education stuff did feel a little forced, it was still cool seeing the Queen of Thieves do what she does, and I guess help us get a little smarter watching it too. It was decent enough for what it was. Hey kid, what's more awkward than movie Spider-Man?
Other movie Spider-Man?
And?
Cartoon Spider-Man?
And?
Other cartoon Spider-Man?
Yes! Writing the tales of X-Men, heck, even doing a crossover with them later. Spider-Man tried capturing the same complex characters and ideas their other hit Marvel show had.
Did they?
It's complicated. No. Spider-Man was great if you wanted the experience of the comic, but it didn't really segue into an emotional TV series. It might have been surprisingly over-ambitious, as every second it's either explaining what's going on, explaining the emotions, explaining the inner monologue. It could never take a break.
Venom.
To assemble those of us who are left and go protect the site of the Doomsday Complex.
I feel like I'm witnessing a part of this country's history.
After seeing the beacon, we always assembled here.
I had to crack open a map to remember where this building was.
How have you been, Madeline?
Oh my god, breathe! You guys are going faster than the dialogue in the social network! The CG city wasn't a bad idea at the time, but now it just sticks out like a sore thumb. In other instances, the CG background matches the look of the painted background. This just looks like he's swinging into a screensaver. But those are just little details. Maybe it could still work if the writing was sharp.
Anyway, this lizard thing is probably just an urban myth. Wait a minute, looks like I was myth-taken.
Oh. But again, to its credit, it did take a lot from the comics, trying to cram in as much as you can in a kid's show. I just think it did it too damn much. It wasn't Power Rangers silly, but it wasn't X-Men serious either. It was something in between. But it seemed to be enough, as this Marvel show lasted 5 seasons, so I guess it must have made a big connection with a lot of fans. And granted, there were some really cool things to see, like Tony Jay as the Kingpin, Mark Hamill as the Hobgoblin, not Topher Grace as Venom. And to think we thought this would be the greatest Marvel team-up we would ever see on any screen.
Lightning strike again! Power of web shooters! Get real sticky!
Sure. These days it sounds a little corny.
Looking back, it's not as bad as I remember, but its pacing is still way too fast for us to absorb every adventure. It's got its fans, though, and I can see why. It was a huge hit, and anything that makes this a little less awkward must be doing something right. But for my money, the best superheroes always shouted,
Oh, can I say it? I've always wanted to say it.
go ahead.
Fork!
It was one word. It was one goddamn word with 5 letters. You couldn't even say 5 letters!
This is nice.
While there were comedic takes on superheroes in the past, none were quite as funny or odd as The Tick. Again, leaning its writing towards the adults rather than kids, The Tick told the story of a nigh invulnerable, absent-minded superhero and his voice of reason sidekick, Arthur.
You can't fight evil with a macaroni duck!
I'll be the judge of that!
While the idea based on the cult comic went through several different incarnations in the future, most people agree this is the one that was the most faithful to the source. It did what many superhero parodies do, adding a big slice of reality to our comic book fantasy. But the biggest punch it lampooned is just how many damn superheroes there are. Particularly now with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, The Tick addressed what would happen if so many of these side characters and spin-offs really did exist in the same universe.
This is all the heroes you could find?
Well, it's such short notice. These people have lives too, you know.
Though sometimes the animation could be a little choppy and the timing a hint off, The Tick still had original writing with very enthusiastic characters.
But what really pursued us? Where were we really trapped? Come on, Arthur! Get meta with me!
Tick himself is infectiously positive. He just loves being the hero, but he never came across as egotistical. He really believes his corny speeches and one-liners, thinking they inspire people just as much as they inspire him.
What pursued us were our own obsessions. I'm good. You're evil. I'm a woman. You're a man. What does it all mean? Nothing.
He never felt cynical or mean-spirited. He doesn't think much about what he's saying, but rather the way he's saying it. To a point where even silverware can serve as a battle cry. It had a modest run of 3 seasons and continued to run in syndication, only increasing its cult following. Though there be many variations on this crazy idea, by far the one who came the closest in strangeness and comedy was the one on Fox Kids.
That's cool, but can't I have a show based on a book series where the scariest part was the cover?
No,
Oh.
It did.
but you can have a show that's less scary than Are You Afraid of the Dark? Goosebumps was based on the hugely successful book series by R.L. Stine. It was wild, imaginative, and not the least bit scary.
Hey!
You know I'm right. You're all right. When I was younger, I was always pissed off that all the scary shows I watched were never scary. Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, even Tales from the Crypt I never found frightening. But as I got older, I realized that's not really what they were about. The intent wasn't to scare you, the intent was to have fun in a classically spooky setup. One of these episodes is about a killer sponge, for God's sake. The hokey acting and over-the-top writing only add to the B-movie quality that honestly kinda gets better every time I see it. That doesn't mean they weren't trying, it just means it should be enjoyed on a different level than you might expect. It's like getting angry if a Scooby-Doo episode isn't scary. It's just not what you're supposed to be looking for. Every show had a new monster or a new scenario that would tie into the character's persona or fears, similar to The Twilight Zone. Except, laughably stupid. It took me a while to warm up to this series, but now watching it with the intent of having a good time, that's exactly what I get out of it. A good time. It's one of those kooky kid shows I weirdly enough like even more as an adult than I do as a kid. Just for entirely different reasons. Sadly though, this is when Fox Kids began their downward spiral.
Oh, geesh. How long did they last after that?
Just a mere 6 years.
That's stupid long.
I know, but here's the thing. Warner Brothers was starting their own network with their own kids program.
WB Kids!
And when they started up, guess what they took with them? Animaniacs, Looney Tunes, and Batman.
Yep.
They even did spin-off shows like Superman, Pinky and the Brain, and their own little Japanese import that was dirt cheap to make and would run for years and years.
Yep.
In fact, even the first Animaniacs episode on Kids WB was a parody of Fox's biggest show, Power Rangers.
Hey, what's wrong with your mouth?
It's all fuzzy.
Fox would still do well, but this was a big bite for them. And many of the upcoming shows did well, but not nearly as well as before. Another Spielberg show called Toonsylvania tried capturing a darker tone on the Animaniacs formula, but sadly the writing wasn't on point and it didn't last very long. I talked in great detail about Sam and Max in another episode. It was creative, but a little too unfocused, earning only one season. And then of course there's this. That's like summing up the Titanic in one sentence. I need a full episode to go into what's wrong with that.
Yeah.
Good call.
After that, Fox Kids went the same route Kids WB went, importing more and more Japanese shows after seeing not only how easier they are to put out, but also how cheap they are to do. And sadly, I stopped watching after that. If we were going to go into this in more detail, we would need people that actually grew up watching this. Okay, go ahead.
Hey kids, remember this incredible writing?
That's a lot of fish.
They made a show out of it.
Oh, God! Shh!
Godzilla the series was a direct continuation of the 1998 Godzilla movie. It featured some actors from the film lending their voices to reprise their roles.
Including Bart Simpson.
It's like a classroom.
Thankfully, Matthew Broderick wasn't one of them, but his character, Nick
Totopoulos.
Totopoulos.
It's Greek, haha.
Did return. The only surviving offspring of the Godzilla that attacked New York in the movie imprinted onto Nick as its parent, and thus they used him as a government-sponsored Pokemon to fight other giant monsters.
That's so stupid, I'm surprised it wasn't in the 98 film.
So am I.
The series was received pretty well by fans of Godzilla, but honestly, following the 98 film, there was nowhere to go but up. We did get some great kaiju fights in the show, though, so I guess I can look past Godzilla's Dick Tracy chin.
I guess it's better than any of the Power Rangers.
And then there's Power Rangers in Space and Lost Galaxy. Power Rangers in Space wrapped up the show's initial run and was supposed to be the series finale. As we know, that didn't happen.
Much to our regret. I don't like it back here.
What on the surface seemed like Star Trek Light actually became one of the most popular and well-received seasons in the show's history. They went much further with character development than they did in most of the previous seasons. There were decently deep arcs for a kid show that featured the Red Ranger's long-lost sister being brainwashed as the Power Rangers' main enemy, and even more multi-dimensional villains. There's plenty more to talk about with this season, which finished the Zordon era and ended up saving the franchise. But some of you may just know it for their crossover with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Cowabunga, I guess.
Hey, we have a deal. No next mutation unless he's fully being tortured.
It's okay, just the mention of the idea hurts me.
The next season, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy kept the outer space theme, but began a new phase in the PR legacy. Starting here, every season introduced a new cast with new powers, Zords, etc., and that became the status quo for the series moving forward. Saban's big plan to get this phase going? Sword in the Stone in space. Woo? Actually, this season was pretty good. I enjoyed playing it.
But I know what you're thinking. Those shows needed a lot more Ryan Gosling as young Hercules.
It's actually amazing how much we weren't thinking that.
Well, Fox Kids was.
I was thinking that.
Yep. There was a spin-off of the Kevin Sorbo show starring a young Ryan Gosling. I always speculated this was just another Goosebumps episode he was in.
It is scary enough.
What else do you need to know about this show? Well, I think this clip says it all.
What is a performance that you've given? Something that you're insanely proud of?
My work on Young Hercules.
Really?
I had a fake tan, leather pants, was fighting imaginary monsters. They weren't really there, but I was acting like they were there.
My God, I think we're all in a Goosebumps episode.
We also can't forget about Beast Wars. This is one of my favorite childhood shows. It traded in cool cars, trucks, and jets for animals like rats and ants. Believe me, it's way cooler than it sounds. This was my generation's Transformers show, and I absolutely loved it. Beast Wars, along with Reboot, was among the first all-CG animated series. The early computerized look doesn't hold up all that well, but for the time, it was revolutionary and set the show apart from most other things on TV. The stories were great, the characters were great, it was just a really solid animated series. That being said,
You stay away from this, Michael Bay! You hear me? Don't you dare defile Rat Trap, Tiger-Trotter, Optimus Prime!
for more on this series, you can check out my top 5 best episodes, right here on the channel.
If my face isn't on it, I don't watch it.
Like I haven't heard that before. Beast Machines Transformers was the less popular sequel series to Beast Wars. It took place almost immediately after and was dark, sobering, and kind of depressing at times. You know, for the kids. The change in tone and design wasn't something anyone was asking for, but it did end all the stories that started in Beast Wars and has gained a small, dedicated following over the years.
Blah, blah, blah. Get to the more hardcore stuff.
Oh, you mean like Frank Miller?
Yeah! Wait, what?
Yeah, there was a show based on a Frank Miller comic. Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot was a show based on a short comic written by Frank Miller. There really isn't too much crossover between the show and the comic, with the show actually being more fleshed out than the comic.
Is Samuel L. Jackson in a Nazi uniform?
No.
It's a good start.
Rusty is the most advanced robot ever made, with a complicated AI and ability to feel emotions. He was meant to be the successor to Big Guy, an advanced robot that protects Earth. However, Rusty's emotional circuits and AI are young, and he therefore acts like a child. Rusty needs to learn how to be the protector of Earth. Big Guy is recommissioned so he can teach Rusty. Big Guy and Rusty was one of the more complex and mature shows in the Year 10 lineup. It was pretty interesting and unique. Although it was never my favorite show, I do remember being engaged by it and wanting to see what happened next.
Well, it's good to know not everything was a Japanese import.
And then there was Digimon.
Yeah, okay.
Digimon monsters, Digimon
When Pokemon became a smash hit, Fox Kids tried to capitalize on that market and trend by introducing the world of Digimon. 7 kids at a summer camp are transported to a digital world, creatively called the Digi-World. There, they discover they are the Digidestined, who must help save the digital and real world with the help of their partner digital monsters, or Digimon. They are also given Digi-devices, which transport them between the real and digital worlds and can help their Digimon digivolve into other forms.
Say Digi again! I dare you! I double dare you!
Digi.
Now I'm mad!
The show was actually a lot of fun. Although it never reached the fever pitch of Pokemon, it was received well by audiences. Although there was fan demand that the anime be shown in its entirety, as the Fox Kids version was edited and changed to fit a more humorous tone than the original Japanese show. And who could ever forget that theme song?
You know, I just got that damn song out of my head and you put it right back in there!
Oh, I thought you were still humming DuckTales.
Woo! Ah!
Digimon success. We also got Monster Rancher, another monster show that was meant to compete with the success of Pokemon. Monster Rancher was first a video game before being made into an anime that Fox Kids picked up. In the game, you use discs to unlock monsters that the player trains to compete in tournaments. In the show, a boy named Genki receives a disc to use while playing. The disc ends up transporting him to a different world where the monsters are real and created by scanning stone discs in temples. Like Digimon, Monster Rancher was edited to make it more suitable for audiences, removing more dramatic elements from the series. I remember loving the show as a kid, but honestly, it was a bit bland and basically an overglorified commercial.
So, an anime. Oh, Christ, I hit a nerve.
Dang.
Fox did give Spider-Man another go with Spider-Man Unlimited, a loose sequel to the '94 series while having a strange and somewhat confusing plot that sent Spider-Man to a duplicate world on the far side of the sun called Counter-Earth. Normally, this would be like a parallel dimension or something, but apparently that's not exactly what Unlimited was going for. Instead, we got a really weird, futuristic planet for Spider-Man to fight Venom and Carnage on while freeing humans from oppression.
Wow, this is making his deal with the devil almost sound credible.
Due to legal issues, this series couldn't draw from any of the decades of source material that came before it, or even use the standard Spider-Man suit for most of its run. There have been some awesome designs for alternate spider suits made over the years, but a web cape? Unique, to say the least. The opening theme sounds like it's trying to be Batman Beyond, but comes off like its goofy clubbing cousin.
Like clubbing a seal, I think you mean.
I get that Spider-Man the Animated Series is an insanely tough act to follow, but Spider-Man Unlimited was a mess from the beginning, both behind and on the screen, that is best skipped over by fans of the webhead.
And then there's Angela Anaconda.
My name is Angela. Hey, hello. Welcome to my Mario show. I'll introduce you.
Did any of us actually watch this show?
No!
I can see why.
By year 12, Fox Kids was losing momentum and pulled back weekday scheduling to only Saturday mornings. By then, the writing must have been on the wall because the following year, Fox Kids stopped airing programs and never returned. Though many of these shows would exist in reruns, and there's more than enough kids shows everywhere now, that magic collection of the right talent for the right age group at the right time never seemed as prominent. Every Saturday morning built an anticipation like no other. Every visit home from school revved up excitement every kid could feel. For a pretty awesome time in our childhoods, we had a cool clubhouse that lived in our TV. And they told us great jokes, classic stories, the latest comics, and even taught us a thing or two. It was everything you thought of when you heard the word Saturday morning. It was a perfect experience so much of us were so happy to have. And we couldn't be more thankful to the awesome people who gave us some absolutely wonderful Saturday mornings on Fox Kids.
Speaking of which, we should probably start getting ready for bed.
What? Oh yeah, I guess we have been watching well over 12 hours of shows. So what do we do now? Well, protocol says we should be playing video games past our bedtime.
Laugh and scream at basically nothing.
And have deep philosophical talks while trying to go to sleep.
Sounds good.
Oh my god, duck season is the best!
Shoot the dog! Shoot the dog!
Yeah.
Will Smith!
Malcolm? Do you believe in God?
Oh no.
Believe or see?
You see God?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about that. And
Apparently my camera stopped. Well, it's been good doing my first actual live reaction to a video. So click that like button, click that subscribe button, and comment down below which other channel videos I should look at other than my favorite channel. So I'll see y'all later. Bye.